The history of the Negro has been taught in schools and places of higher learning for centuries. It's a history which includes Africa, slavery, and places to which many of us have been scattered around the world. However, there's a reason why many schools and professors, historians, and researchers have an incomplete understanding of the true history of the Negro. And quite simply, it's because they don't include the laws or decrees issued by the kings who authorized and governed slavery. Many institutions fail to read a single decree by the King of Portugal and Spain, which is why this YouTube video, of all things, is more accurate, more factual than the pseudo-history taught in institutions of higher learning. In this video, we will do something for the first time in modern history in regards to the history of the Negro. We will read the laws and decrees of the kings and queen to see who they said they enslaved and to see what they said to do with them. However, before we review the actual law and decree which started and governed the transatlantic slave trade, let's begin by taking a look at the people targeted and persecuted by the King of Portugal before and during the transatlantic slave trade. Let's begin by taking a look at the Lakesh relief, currently found in the British Museum. You can find the relief by opening your web browser and in your Google search bar, type British Museum Lakesh relief. Enter. And in your results, find the result which contains museum number 124911. That's museum number 124911. Select it. Now navigate to the bottom of the page and select the fourth picture from the left and zoom in to view the ancient tribe of Judah, depicted by the Assyrians who conquered the city of Lakesh. Notice that Judah is depicted with the short, nappy, woolly hair of the Negro. And now be careful of deceivers who would try to hide this truth by deliberately hiding the pictures of the nappy, woolly-headed Judah, and instead show pictures of a people with their head covered. Additionally, a mass grave site was discovered at the Lakesh site, which further validates the nappy, woolly-headed pictures of Judah etched on the walls of the Lakesh relief. As the following reference reads, Archaeology and Forensic Anthropology, the 701 BC time capsule of Lakesh. Skipping ahead, it reads, no ancient Judean DNA samples have ever been formally published, but we do have a time capsule of data from 701 BCE found at the Judean city of Lakesh in the form of a mass grave that was excavated there. A large mass burial was found dating to the 701 BC Assyrian siege and the conquest of Lakesh, when the Assyrians conquered and brutally murdered the civilian population and exiled the ruling class. The excavator, J.L. Starkley, observed that the skeletons were likely secondary burial, i.e. victims died somewhere else, decomposed, and were reburied here and piled into a disorderly fashion sometime after their death at the hands of the Assyrians during their conquest of Lakesh. Starkley estimated that 1,500 individuals were buried in this mass grave. From these skeletons, 695 skulls were sent to London, England for analysis. The bodies were those of men, women, and children, the Judean civilian population of Lakesh from 701 BCE or 2,710 years ago. And the next reference reads, Comparisons are made between Lachesh and 21 ancient Egyptian and allied series of skulls by the method of the coefficient of racial likeness, and a classification of the material is presented. The relationships found suggest that the population of the town in 700 BC was entirely or almost entirely of Egyptian origin. Very close connections with some contemporary Egyptian series being found. They show further that the population of Lachesh was probably derived principally from Upper Egypt or Southern Egypt. And the next reference reads, the first report on Lachesh skulls included a thorough examination of pathology, metrics, artificial deformation, and epigenetic affinity. Utilizing craniometrics, Risden concluded that the group was very similar to dynastic Egyptian material. In fact, he stated that the entire population was of foreign origin, representing descendants of a group derived primarily from Upper Egypt or Southern Egypt. Skipping ahead, he concluded that the group was fairly heterogeneous, having close relationships to North African, Egyptian, and Nubian groups, thus lending support to an Egypto-Nubian presence. And as this article goes on to state that those Egypto-Nubians were not in fact foreigners, but were natives to the area. Now, these Egypto-Nubian sons of Judah were later taken to Spain in Babylon roughly 140 years later, as the following reference reads, the Spanish Jews are the true descendants from the tribe of Judah and the royal house of David, and were settled in Spain from the time of the captivity of the first temple by Nebuchadnezzar. And then once these nappy-headed sons of Judah were taken to Spain and Portugal, they would be later expelled from Spain and Portugal and placed on the west coast of Africa less than 10 years before the start of the transatlantic slave trade in great numbers. As the following reference reads, for he sent new inhabitants who first settled in Guinea, next in Angola, and lastly on the island of St. Thomas, that so they might be better used to the air, that the said king sold all those Jews for slaves that refused to embrace the Roman religion, and caused their children to be baptized, from whom coming thither in great numbers, most of the present inhabitants were descended. These sons of Judah, transported to the west coast of Africa in great numbers, less than 10 years before the start of the transatlantic slave trade, were called by different names. They were called Lancados, Degradados, Tangamos, Portuguese, and they were also called Negroes. And so the sons of King Dawid multiplied and began to spread throughout West Africa. Before the first transatlantic slaves were sent from the west coast of Africa, the sons of King Dawid were well established. That is, until a series of historical events occurred that would change the world as we know it forever. First, King Manuel changed the trade policy for West Africa. Instead of using Lancados to conduct the trade, he switched to something else. And as a result, he no longer needed the Lancados. In fact, it meant that they were in the way. As the following reference reads, things changed under King Manuel I. At the beginning of his reign, King Manuel did not lease trading rights with Gambia to Portuguese merchants or Lancados, as he did with the rivers of Guinea and Sierra Leone. And so once King Emmanuel changed the way he made his money, he no longer needed the brews. In fact, they were in the way. And so on March 15th, 1518, the year the first slaves were shipped directly from Africa to America, he sent Bernardino Gomez to orchestrate a massive manhunt of Lancados. And he used the newly created law of King Manuel to do it. As the following reference reads, King Manuel also had further threats in store for those lancados, who were already on the coast in large numbers. On the 15th of March, 1518, he commissioned Bernardem Gomez to sail to Guinea to superintend the removal of the lancados. And the next reference reads, the crown at first encouraged the policy of having lancados in this region to facilitate commerce. Degradados sailed on the voyages of both Vasco da Gama and Pedro Alvarez Cabral. Da Gama took 12 degradados with him and probably several in Southeast Africa. Once in place, it became clear that the Portuguese crown was unable to control them. In an effort to keep these regions free of non-Portuguese commercial activities, in 1518, the crown reversed the policy of creating lancados and attempted to round them up. And the following reference reads, finally, on March the 15th, 1518, he published a violent charter for which he sent a special ship commanded by Bernardem Gomez to the ports of Guinea with the mission of getting all the Christian lancados who were there to board. Those who returned to Europe obeying this order would be forgiven as long as they paid the 10 cruzados along with half of their possessions or their farms. Those, however, who refused to embark and to leave the lands of Africa would be handed over to the African kings to be killed. The permit authorized Captain Bernardem Gomez to offer to the indigenous chiefs all the gifts that were necessary to achieve the delivery or the murder of those lancados. It seems that these violent measures by monarch Venturoso were intended to reach Jews and foreign adventurers who spread freely along the African coast. And so the law that was written just a few years before against the lancados was now fully enforced, and a worldwide decree was given to all of Portugal's allies in Africa and abroad. And the message was clear. Go, hunt them down, and bring them to me, no matter where they are or how long it's been. Find them. I hereby authorize everyone to hunt them, to take all their possessions. You have my permission. You can keep half of their possessions. Just bring the other half to me, and bring them to me in chains. Bring them to the judges of Guinea as prisoners. And to all those looking for slaves, you can now purchase them from Africa, from the judges of Guinea, for they are now under the judgment of natural death. That was a summary and a paraphrase of a law that's roughly 20 pages long. And with that being said, let's take a closer look at this law issued by King Manuel, who started the transatlantic slave trade and also started it from Africa. This is the law that's never taught in any institutions of learning. A copy of this law can be found in Portugal's National Library. And you can check the description of this video for a link of your very own copy of a non-translated copy. Now, this document is written in ancient Portuguese, which doesn't translate well in Google Translate. So with that being said, we were blessed to have the help of a kind, helpful sister, Ema, professor, perfectionist, along with a professional translation company to review and certify these translations. And with that said, here are a few important excerpts from our translations. First, the law starts by stating the people of whom it is for. Researchers agree this law was written specifically for Lancados. We see this in books from the 1900s. We also note that this law describes the targeted people as being those sent and those who go to Guinea. This lines up with the groups of King Dawood's sons that we reviewed earlier in this video. Some were sent by way of the expulsion edicts, and some fled on their own. Those are the ones who go to Guinea without the king's consent. So hopefully you can see this is just one big story that started in Spain and Portugal and made its way into Africa. As the following reference reads, and it reads, regarding those who are sent to Elmina or those who go to Guinea without the permission from the king, as well as those who do not comply with the rules. Here's a copy of the notes from one of our translators. These points have been validated using additional books and references. And it says, the fifth book is about the punishments or the ordinances for those that, one, went to Guinea with the consent of the king, but didn't keep his rules. Main crimes against the kingdom. They didn't keep the Catholic faith, they didn't pay taxes, or they had multiple wives. Point two, those that were sent to Guinea as punishment for not converting to the Catholic faith, so they couldn't go back by their own will. They were required good behavior, but they would often incur the same crimes. Reparations were paid to the kingdom in silver, gold, merchandise, and labor. The law then goes on to summarize the reason for the law. And it reads, the ordinations and the laws which have thus far been created for things related to our town, Elmina, and for things related to Guinea, are not going well and are not being declared like they should. Therefore, our service needs to step up and help preserve the enforcement of laws, since we are suffering quite a bit. If we take action, such attitude will be useful to all our kingdoms and all the governors and landlords, and also help with the excommunications that have been going on in many kingdoms. However, many laws have not even been created or confirmed yet. This situation is generating a lot of confusion and questions. We need to show that we have the ability to govern properly. The laws that talk about our mind and what we managed to take away from Guinea were idealized by my uncle, King Alfonso, as well as my cousin, King John. Something which they should take a lot of credit for. In the following paragraph, we will write what the law must be. The law basically states that these people could not buy or sell in West Africa without first having written permission from Portugal. And if the Lancados or sons of King Dawood broke this law, the sentence involved turning over the lawbreakers to the Portuguese judges and being sentenced to natural death, aka slavery. As the following reference reads, and it reads, by law, we are ordering all people not to go out of our ships or go to other lands and seas or places that we have conquered, with the objective of waging war or stealing things in our name. Such things should not be done without our permission. The person who does this shall be killed as punishment, which is natural death and slavery. The person who does this can also lose all their belongings and goods. This punishment also goes to all those people who attempt to steal things from our ships, like machinery, mechanical parts, or artillery. Those who are found wandering around other seas shall face the consequences. However, those who were found but have not done anything wrong shall be spared. We need to know all the information we can about the occurrences so we can order the correct punishment to be applied or not. And by this law of ours, we give place and license to all captains, pilots, masters, or landlords of our ships, or our keepers, or any other person of our kingdom, or landlords that those parts for their privilege or by our permission they go. We here state the permission to go to those places, and every ship, land, seas that they find, they are allowed to take them and bring all the people they find as prisoners. And as a message to those who defile us will be delivered to our judge of Guinea, which is the west coast of Africa. And by him be judged. Half of what they had will be divided by those who brought them, and the other half will be ours. And last but not least, the same law that authorized the taking of these people also authorized for the first time the taking of slaves from the west coast of Africa. As the following reference reads, and it reads, we are also certified to give permission to the captains of our ships and to order them to go to Elmina or to Sao Tome and to Principe Islands to trade and to negotiate. However, a trip to Sao Tome and Principe Islands should be taken when it is really necessary. There, our ships might have the possibility of buying many slaves to bring to our kingdoms, as well as other things that can be purchased. Ladies and gentlemen, this law written by the King of Portugal is the actual law that started the transatlantic slave trade from Africa to the Americas. It is a law written specifically for Lancados, who are Black Portuguese, who are Spanish Jews, who are Negroes, who are the sons of King Dawid. For the first time in modern history, we have uncovered the greatest secret of the transatlantic slave trade. This is history in the making.